Like Woody Allen, Lily Brett has made a trademark of her New York existential angst. Now she's harvested her memories of her career as a rock journalist, including lending her false eyelashes to Cher, in her latest novel, Lola Bensky. Lily Brett, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you.
What's taken you so long to mine this material?
Well, that's a very good question. I made a lot of notes for this book, and then I put the notes into manila folders, 10 manila folders. I bound each folder with an elastic band, and then I put a very large elastic band around all 10 folders, found an old brown travel bag, packed all of the notes into an old brown travel bag, and put them in the drawer of a metal filing cabinet.
So what's that about?
Good question. And I couldn't open the drawer. I used to walk past and look at it and then keep walking. And I don't know why it took me so long to face it, and you would really think that as I've spent half my income and 3/4 of my life on a psychoanalyst that I might have some idea. I don't. And 1 year went by, 2 years went by, 3 years went by, and my German publisher called me up and he said, "We're just calling you to wish you a very happy New Year." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And he said, "Nothing else." And I said, "Oh, thank you." He said, "There's no other reason for this call. We just want to wish you a happy New Year." And I finally, after he said, "And there's nothing else," for about the 5th time, I said to him, "I have to tell you the truth. It's not that I'm having trouble writing it, it's that I'm having trouble facing it." And after that, he was so kind to me, and after that I thought, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 months to either start writing it or dump it.
What was it that you were having such difficulty with about this material?
Well, it's really interesting that I'm still not quite sure. I think it was quite a painful time in my life. Although I didn't know it at the time, and I think it's a good thing to know when you're having a painful time. And what I did was eventually I took the whole bag out to Shelter Island, which is 90 miles out of Manhattan, and I put all my writing accoutrements next to me, and I started to write. And when I started to write, I didn't stop. 11 months. I wrote 7 days a week.
So then you just got it all out in one great big gush. So tell us about Lola Bensky, because Lola Bensky is obviously a younger you pursuing the career that you pursued as a rock journalist, and with many of the same anxieties and issues that you've explored in your other books. So
she is a younger part of me, and we do share a remarkable number of issues. She is a 19-year-old rock journalist. She's overweight. She irons her hair straight. She doesn't know how dangerous that is. And she asks a lot of questions, and she loves asking questions because she's brought up in a home where you can't ask questions. There are so many that you can't ask, and so many that are unanswerable. And she plans a lot of diets, and she works in a world of rock music. She's not really all that interested in rock music or its history.
But she's interested in the people, the personalities that she comes across, and she comes across the absolute A-list of rock and roll at that time. So is that really the case, Lily, that you did interview Mick Jagger, Janis Joplin, Mama Cass, Jimi Hendrix? Did you meet all of those people?
I interviewed everybody that I wrote about in this book, and hundreds more, Caroline. Hundreds.
And the dialogue that we read in the book that you put into their mouths, is that dialogue that you've extracted from the original interviews, or have you made it up?
Well, I think probably what's really important is A, it's a book of fiction, and secondly, I wanted to paint as true a portrait as I could of the people that I wrote about. This was a this was the beginning of celebrity journalism. Celebrity journalism really didn't exist before then. And so what I had access to was what very few people would have access to today. I just had access to the person I was interviewing. There were no managers, there was nobody around.
No publicists, no minders,
no
spin
and
doctors.
and no 15-minute window where you can ask 5 set questions.
And you're not allowed to ask the 5 questions you really want to ask.
Exactly. And I went to people's homes. I mean, it didn't strike me as unusual to be alone in Mick Jagger's apartment with him. I just thought, well, I was from Melbourne, Australia. I didn't really know how the world worked, and hadn't been, certainly wasn't a trained journalist. But the access that I got, I went into so many people's homes and there was no time limit. I remember actually wondering when I should leave. What I really feel that I wanted to do in this book was to paint the truest portrait I could paint. And I feel I did that. I feel that a lot of people who are famous, you don't ever really know what they're like, and you imagine they're very different from you. You imagine that fame, wealth and celebrity makes you a very different sort of human being. And what I discovered is that it doesn't. You're just as likely to be fabulous as awful as all of us are.
And I think that's one of the things that's so lovely about the portraits that you paint, is that you've shown us these people in their vulnerability a lot of the time. So we're seeing people who have the same anxieties and preoccupations as the rest of us.
Sure, and when I look back in my real life, I think I asked every single person I interviewed how they got on with their mother. And very clearly, I was quite concerned with how I was getting on with my own mother. But nobody was surprised by the question. I remember Cat Stevens answered it at great length, and I was fascinated because I really wanted to know.
Because one of the other things that I think is quite different in a way about the weight that you place in this book in terms of your parents is, in the past we've seen a lot of your father. We've got to know the father character in your work very well, Eric. But this book tells us a lot more about your mother, or at least your fictional version of your mother.
Yes, that's
Renia.
what I was going to correct
Yes,
you,
absolutely.
yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about this fictional mother and how close she is to your real mother? Because you say that she was, for example, a very beautiful woman, and I've seen photographs of your mother, and I know your mother was stunning.
Yes, I mean, my mother was extremely beautiful, and that was quite important to her in the fact that she had lost just about everything one can lose. She'd lost her family, her country, her culture, her language, her youth, her education, but she was very, very beautiful. I think in the novel, Lola's anxiety about her mother, Lola's desire to fix her mother up, to help her mother, is very, very close to my own life. I mean, my mother died quite young, really. She was younger than I am now. And I've missed her so much. I have felt so miserable about losing her that I've often thought she would be thrilled to know how miserable I've been and wished I could. No, not that she'd want me miserable, but when somebody just wishes they could have just another half an hour with you. And I think that was probably one of the reasons I found it hard to face the book.
Now, one of the great sort of dynamics between Renia, the mother, and Lola is the issue of weight. Lola's weight is her constant preoccupation. And I love the way, even when Lola goes to talk to Mama Cass, who obviously must have been huger than Lola ever was, the discussion is about weight and diets. I just cannot imagine talking to Mama Cass about diets without that being somehow awkward, but Lola pulls it off. So can you just talk a little bit about writing about food anxiety, dieting, weight? Because you are now a very slim woman, having
slimish
not been a slim woman.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. I think that I know hardly any women who eat normally without thinking about what they eat. You know, a guy goes into a restaurant, he looks at the menu and he orders what he wants to eat. No woman does that. You know, she agonises about, should I have this, should I have that, or else she agonises afterwards about what she should have eaten, what she didn't eat, or what she did eat. And I think that for Lola, and I think for me, weight was a very big issue, because in the death camps and in the ghettos, if you had like an extra 2 pounds on you, you were quite likely to have been doing something at someone else's expense. And that was something that was very important to my mother, that she never did anything to hurt anybody else. She found fat intolerable, and she prized slimness above all. You could have won the Nobel Prize for nuclear physics and my mother would have said, oh, what a fatty.
But isn't it ironic, Lily, that you've ended up living in a city where thinness is pushed to an extreme, and you have social x-rays who have absolutely not an ounce of fat on them, and this business of being slim is prized to such an extent?
Well, that has changed. I'd say that was true until about maybe 8 years ago. Suddenly curvy women, and I'm thrilled to pieces, are seen as hot, as sexy, as desirable, and I love that. That reassures me enormously.
One of my favourite things about this book is the way you bring to life Lillian Roxon. You bring her back, you revive her. She was an important friend to you, wasn't she?
She was a very important friend to me.
Tell us about Lillian.
Well, Lillian was Australia's first female foreign correspondent, which is no mean feat, and she was irrepressible. She also was incredibly generous. She befriended people, she mentored people. She told me that I was very talented. Nobody had said that to me ever in my life, because I thought talent meant you can play the piano or the violin or at a pinch tap dance. And I didn't really know what she meant, but she introduced me to people as Australia's top journalist, and I followed her saying, oh no, not really, until she practically sort of elbowed me in the stomach to tell me to stop. And she also said to me, don't get married, don't go back to Australia, don't get married, you'll just get married and have children, you'll never write, you know, stay here.
But as well as being very generous, you say in the book that she was capable of very well executed bitchiness.
Oh yeah, and I admire that enormously. I love people who are really articulate in their bitchiness. I adore it, I admire it so much.
Why?
Because I think it's very clever. It's a very clever thing to do with people that you don't like. There are few people who can do that very, very well. Paul Keating's one of them. Just fabulously articulate in every way, but boy, if he doesn't like somebody, it's a sheer pleasure to listen to.
So you like those kind of damning put-downs?
Well, it's not a damning put-down, it's telling the truth. That's how I see it. I think most of us do not tell each other really what we think. It's very hard to know what somebody else really thinks. So when someone comes out and actually says it, and says it so clearly, there's no doubt about what they're saying, I find it really, really admirable.
We've got Mick Jagger, we've got Janis Joplin, we've got Jimi Hendrix, we've got everybody.
Jim
really.
Morrison, Brian Jones, Mama Cass, they're just the ones who died.
Sonny and Cher. Out of all of them, for you, who is the figure that made the greatest impact on you, that impressed you either with their honesty or their vulnerability or their talent?
Well, I think that probably both Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, for very different reasons. Jimi Hendrix was an unbearably nice person, so polite, so thoughtful. He listened to what you said, and he was nothing like the person you saw on stage, off stage. I first saw him at a very small venue in London, and I knew I had to go to his dressing room afterwards. I had never seen a man move like that on stage. I'd never seen a man move like that off stage. I didn't know men could move like that. And I was in a state of terror. And yet I got in there, and this sort of very soft-voiced person with beautiful manners greeted me. So, and I know he'd had a hard life. And I've always been drawn to people who've had a struggle. My whole life I've been drawn to them, and I think that struggle, I wouldn't advocate it, you know, for people, but I think it gives you an appreciation about the good things you've got, and makes you, it just makes you more thoughtful in many, many ways. And Janis Joplin, for the very same reason. I mean, she was just a gutsy, full of life. You know, in Lola Bensky, when Lola is sitting down at the Monterey Pop Festival, she realises she's sitting next to Janis Joplin, and so she says, could I ask you a weird question? She introduces herself. Could I ask you a weird question? And Janis Joplin says, you know, I like weird questions. And Lola says, am I as fat as Mama Cass? And so Janis Joplin in the book peers across at Mama Cass and says, hell no, in a voice that Lola is sure Mama Cass can hear. But she was very wholehearted, and she really had a struggle of feeling out of place, unacceptable. You know, she was not the pretty girl. She spoke up against racism. She was friends with African Americans. I mean, in Texas, in Port Arthur, Texas, that's not a popular way to be. And I felt her suffering. I mean, she was a good person to talk about relationships with your mother.
Having spent so long delaying writing this book.
It wasn't avoiding or delaying, it was an inability to face it.
Now that you've given us Lola, your alter ego, who does connect with you in very many similarities, do you feel a sense of relief at having told this story? Have you been able to let go of something? Has this been an important sort of watershed for you?
What's been important to me is that I did it. I feel really happy that I did it. I would have been so miserable. I've never dumped a book, and I would have been so miserable. And I'm just really happy that I did it. It's taught me a lesson. I will never, ever put anything that I'm writing in a filing cabinet drawer again. I will keep it there on my desk where I can see it all the time. And it also showed me I really missed it. I wrote a lot of, you know, I wrote a lot of poetry in that time, and I wrote catalogue essays and small things. But when I started writing again, I thought, how could I have just forgotten how much I love this? You know, I just love being immersed in another world. And I think I'd forgotten how good that feels to me. I mean, I spent the 11 months I spent writing the book, I was in 1967. The fact that it was 2011 went right by me. And it's a fabulous way to be, because all the sort of really irritating things about everyone's daily life just, well, you know, didn't bother me at all. All I cared about was Lola Bensky.
Don't even try to work out where Lola Bensky ends and Lily Brett begins, because they share a past, a New York address, and plenty of panic attacks and delicious neuroses. Just call it art imitating life.